I just want to review in slightly greater detail some of the main points that Senator Clinton touched on about the content of the new Palestinian school books. These books were produced this past year and just were released to the Palestinian students for 12th grade in the November of 2006. Now the books, and this is significant, were produced by the Palestinian Curriculum Development Center. This center was established under the Fatah governments of Arafat and Abbas. And the head of the committee till today is Dr. Naim Abu al-Khumbus, who was the Minister of Higher Education. So this is not reflecting a shift in Hamas ideology. This is reflecting what is the Fatah ideology, and that's very significant because we see a merging of the ideologies in this report. Now, I want to touch on 5 of these issues with some of the quotes to give you a sense of what is so disturbing in the education in the new school books. Now, in the new school books, the Palestinians are defining the battle with Israel as a ribat. And I want to show you how the Palestinians define the ribat. The ribat for Allah is related to jihad being found in areas where there is a struggle between Muslims and their enemies. This is a religious term. This is transferring the conflict from a territorial nationalistic conflict to a religious conflict where there is no room for compromise. Not only that, they say that Palestinians people are one of the greatest of the ribat. This is seen as a unique ribat, a very special ribat, and they go even further and they talk about history. Islamic history has had numerous battles. Momentous battles in Islamic history took place on this land, and the residents of this land are in constant struggle with their enemies. The history testifies, the Byzantines, the Crusades, the Mongols. There were significant changes in Islamic history with the battles on this land. So they're telling the Palestinian children that you have a global Islamic destiny to hold on to this land as others have done it in the past. Now, I just want to show you how this parallels the lesson in the Hamas Charter. In the Hamas Charter, Palestine is Islamic Waqf. No one can renounce it or part of it. This is bringing over mainstream Palestinian ideology to much closer to the Hamas by defining this as a religious battle and Israel's land, what they call Palestine, to be Islamic land. Now, in the school books, it's clear that they're not talking about the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And this I want to show you. The books hardly mention that as an issue. The books mention over and over again Israel's existence is the challenge. And here, for example, Palestine's war, this the senator mentioned, ended with a catastrophe that's unprecedented in history when the Zionist gang stole Palestine and established a state of Israel. The establishment of Israel is what's challenged, not the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and this is the problem. Israel is defined as a colonial imperialism. Colonial imperialism is centered in Palestine, and other examples like this. They talk about the UN resolution that Zionism is racism, and they say these racist operations that Israel carried out since 1948 motivated the UN to pass the Zionism is a racism, that they're legitimizing the UN resolution, and they point out that the decision was canceled based on the U.S. proposal. So they give the historical background, but they say that it was based on the factual reality of Israel being a racist state. Other terminology, likewise, throughout the school books, Israel is referred to as Zionist gang, Zionist enemy, Zionist entity, enemies of the people, and much more terminology throughout the school books that is literally denying the legitimacy of Israel. Now, beyond denying the legitimacy of Israel, Israel is presented as if, the world is presented as if Israel does not exist at all. This on maps, so for example, this is a new map, it says Palestine here on Israel. Here's another map that says Palestine. No map mentions Israel in any of the school books in the Palestinian Authority. Beyond the pictures, the new school books define Palestine as if it's an existent state, and this is very significant. It's a state, they call it a dawla, not a geographic area, but a dawla, which is a state which has water access to the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. Now, saying that Palestine has access to the Red Sea means Israel does not exist. Again, it's the state. They also talk about the size of Palestine being greater than 10,000 square kilometers. The size of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip together is about 6,500 kilometers. So they're saying that Israel doesn't exist to their children here as well. Holocaust denial, which the senator mentioned, it's creating World War II without the Holocaust. There is extensive details about the history of World War II. They talk about the race theory of the Nazi movement. They even talk about the trials of the Nazi war criminals at the end of the war, but they don't say what they were on trial for. They don't mention the Holocaust or Jews or the genocide. They just were these trials. So they were actually teaching the history, but actively eliminating any reference to the Holocaust in the school books. Finally, the final topic is the United States. The United States is presented very, very actively in the school books as an enemy of the Palestinians. They define the West today as in a clash. Modern West is with the Islamic world as a clash of civilizations. They define American foreign policy as being one of strategic self-interest, and they talk about it doesn't matter one president or another, as is clearly apparent in Afghanistan, Cuba, Iran, blockade of Libya, Sudan. All of this is talking about America being the source of international friction in the world, with many other examples. In fact, human rights, they talk about the United States as using human rights for their own purposes. For example, the belief that human rights is nothing but an excuse used by the West and the ruling states for interfering in matters of other states, as in Afghanistan, Iraq, Darfur, and more, so that the United States is being presented as an enemy. Because of this presentation, they actually define the insurgency fighting against the United States. The Iraqis did not surrender to this American and British occupation, but succeeded in organizing themselves into a brave resistance to liberate Iraq. So they're clearly putting those fighting American soldiers as brave resistance against them. Now, there is one glaring omission about the United States in the school books. The Palestinians felt it important to mention that Israel is getting economic aid from the United States, but they left out the $1.5 billion that the Palestinian Authority has received and the NGOs. The United States is the greatest single country's financial aid to the Palestinian Authority has come from the United States, and that was totally left out, whereas they put in the fact that Israel is a strategic ally getting political and economic support. So there was, we see from this omission as well, there was a clear intention of putting the United States in an enemy camp. Because of this whole picture, violence against Israel is defined as muqawma. Muqawma is resistance since 1948, and afterwards the resistance, the muqawma in the inhabitants, in which the inhabitants carried acts of most glorious heroism and sacrifice, have become lessons imitated by resistance to colonial occupation and persecution around the world. Essentially, they're teaching the children that Palestinian terror not only isn't it negative, it is glorious heroism, and all the other resistance nations around the world who have adopted this are learning from the Palestinians. So they're actually using themselves and their terror as a role model, and they're proud that they have been a role model for other terrorist movements around the world. And finally, with all of this picture, Palestine will be liberated by its men, its women, its young, and its elderly. The ultimate destruction of Israel is promised in the school books. Now, PMW studies everything in the Palestinian society: sports, culture, crossword puzzles, television, as the senator mentioned. And all of these messages are coming to children from every part of society, from culture, from sports even. And I want to just show you two examples. We mentioned the Holocaust. I want to show you how children were taught the Holocaust on Palestinian television, and then one example from yesterday from the media to show how these messages never leave. This was a children's program on official Palestinian television owned by the Palestinian Authority, teaching about the history of the region. It was through song and dance. It was a lot of children actors designed for it, and this is how they taught about the Holocaust.
هم اللي عملوا المحرقة، سكينهم في الحومة مغربة ومشرقة، فتحوا لنا أفراد يخبزوا فيها البني آدمين، هدموا القرى، حرقوا المدن، وكل ما ينطفي فرن يوجدوا لنا 100 فرن.
This isn't just Holocaust denial. This is turning the Holocaust on its head. Israel, the Jews, created ovens for the Palestinians. This was on official Palestinian television, again, on a children's program. I'll just end this with one item from yesterday, just to show you how current this is. This is February 7th. Palestinian television, an interview with a university lecturer from Birzeit University, and what he said was as follows: what the American culture creates is danger to humanity. The Americans, 100,000 Iraqis are killed, and it doesn't interest them. Why? Because he lives in the racism within him. He lives in the racism in his culture. Zionism is the same thing. Nazism carried the same thought. This is the Western product. It's a product of Western philosophy. Total attack on Western society. And this is the tragic reality of the Palestinian media. It's constantly rejecting the West, rejecting the United States, rejecting Israel in their essence, with parallels like this to Nazism, and it literally creates a pure hate environment for the children. To sum up, these are many, many problems in the Palestinian school books. I think that the problem of packaging this as a religious conflict is very, very significant. It is literally the difference between the Hamas and the Fatah and the mainstream is disappearing if this is a religious conflict for Allah. And finally, and this is, I think, the most critical problem, the well-meaning student in the Palestinian Authority is left with no justification or even the option, the religious option of accepting Israel as a neighbor in coexistence. The school books, the television, the culture, the whole society must educate for peace. Our goal is to have peace with our Palestinian neighbors, and our goal is that through awareness and through actions like the senators, there will be a change forced on the Palestinians to educate for peace so that we can have peace in the next generation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you all very much. Change.